Hi, it's Karen, the Weekend Craftaholic. Thanks for joining me and welcome to September. Now, I've decided throughout the month of September that I am going to be stash busting. So hopefully you can come along on the journey with me, get involved, organise your scraps as well if they're driving you as mad as they are for me. Today I'm going to give you a quick overview of my plans and then we're going to get stuck into some paper organising. So first off, I've decided to do this because I've realised having these nicely organised means I don't actually get to use them. What I really need is something on my desk, because I do always keep this on my desk, which is all these little offcuts, and I do use these quite often. So if I'm doing some stamping, I'll do a quick test on these first and so on. So I guess I've come to the conclusion that when we're too organised with our scraps, we tend to not use them, because if I'm then looking for a particular colour or a pattern, I'm not going to get this out and use it. So what I want to do with my paper scraps is organise them in such a way that I can leave them on the desk, they're close to hand, and they're also in a bit of a size and shape that I know that I can use. So this will be repurposed, it won't go to waste. This holds 12 by 12 sheets, so I'm going to use this for some of my paper collections that I don't have too much of. So throughout September, as I said, I'm going to be sharing with you all my stash busting tips. So you'll get 2 videos each week, so 8 videos in total. Today, as I mentioned, is all about paper, and tomorrow I'm going to go through sticker books, because I feel like I'm also accumulating far too many stickers and not actually getting through them. So throughout September, I'm going to challenge myself to get these scraps used, because yes, we all love new collections of paper, but I don't want to waste them, not when I've got all of these waiting to be used. Now, what I will say is any of the collections that I have, I do keep all my offcuts and scraps with those. So these are just random, whether they're plain or slightly patterned. These are offcuts that I've just added for many, many years. I mean, even just looking at this one, this I think was one of the first things I bought, this 12 by 12 pad, when I came to Australia 13 years ago. So I think it's waited quite a long time to get used, and if I'm not going to use it, then I need to ditch it. But we'll talk about ways to use up your paper next. What I want to avoid is cutting into any full sheets of 12 by 12. So I'm just going to show you actually how I store all my 12 by 12 pads at the moment. You can see it's quite messy. I have been trying to use the scraps, and you can see they're just not very appealing the way they are. So I'm going to make use of those. And then I'm also showing you my little trolley. I'm not going to touch any paper pads. So this isn't about paper pads. This is just about offcuts of paper that we obviously don't want to get rid of because it's too pretty, or it's just wasteful in general. So it's just about the scraps. So where I've got paper pads, they are not being touched. This is just a way for me to use up some paper scraps. And throughout the month, I'm going to be covering off lots of different things like die cuts, journaling cards, and how we can actually use up some of the stuff in our stash without necessarily needing to buy anymore. All right, let's get stuck in. So you will have seen previously that it wasn't that long ago I organised all of my paper scraps into drawers. I had one drawer with all my patterned paper and another drawer, which I still have, as you saw, with coloured paper, and I kept those in separate pouches. Now, whilst it was nicely organised, I just still wasn't using it, and it's taking up too much space as well. I need to start getting through some of this. So I have a master plan. I've got this fridge bin, and you can see here it's just, let me see what size it is actually. 10 by 7, and this is going to hold quite nicely because it's 6 inch across. It's going to hold papers. Now I've already made some dividers. This is just with acetate with my Cricut machine as a template in the design studio. Just stick some labels on, and my plan is to cut down. You see I've already made a start here. Is to cut down paper scraps. And I'm going to start with the biggest size that I generally use, which is 8 by 6. Now the reason I'm going to start with 8 by 6, I love to do 8 by 6 layouts. This all started when I started to subscribe to Citrus Twist Kits, and they actually come with 8 by 6 papers. And that's how I fell in love with that particular size of scrapbooking layout. So I'm going to start with the biggest size. And then the other thing is, even if I don't want to do an 8 by 6 layout, they're also the perfect height for my pocket page notebooks. So then I can use some of the pattern paper, as I have done here, as a background, and just cut it down slightly as well. So this was some paper that I just cut down. So that will serve 2 purposes, scrapbooking and my pocket page notebooks. And then the next size down will be the 6x4 and the 3x2, which is a normal journaling card size. They will be a great standard size, but I'm also going to do 4x3, which is roughly the size of a Memory Dex card. Now, we don't have to be super exact with the size of a Memory Dex card because they are slightly larger, but 4x3 will be a good size for that. So I'll have all of those ready pre-cut out. And I'm also going to do some smaller 2x2, and I got the idea from these little swatch books, and these are the ones that you usually get from the Pink Paisley Page Avon collections, but they're a great little size to add as well. So you see, you always get one with sentiments in, as well as one with little samples of all the pattern paper in that collection. So I thought these would also be a good size as well, if there's any smaller sizes left after we've cut down all of the other sizes. Basically, I got this idea from quilting. So if you don't know, I do love to quilt now and again as well. A very time consuming exercise, but this is something that quilters do all the time, because in quilting world you make blocks, and again, when you've got scraps of fabric left, you tend to make blocks from your biggest size. So mine's usually a 5-inch block that I'll do, and then if the fabric's too small for that, you can work your way down until you've got really small pieces. But let's get stuck into cutting up some of this paper, and then you'll get a feel of what I mean and understand a little bit more in terms of the cutting down of the sizes. So I have put myself on fast forward because obviously this is a really time consuming exercise, and I won't show you all of this because it does take me an awful long time to do. But what I'm doing, I'm starting with these pieces, and I'm using the grid lines on my glass mat here. I actually love it for this, and I'm just measuring out the pieces, and I'm trying to make it fit the biggest size first. So I'm not too worried about the tiny bits of scraps that are left, but I want to keep them in these specific block sizes, because I often find it's easier if the paper is filed and sorted in the same size. It's easier to flick through. When they're all adult pieces of paper, you know, it's not as easy to do. And because I love to do card making as well, you know, quite often I find that then I'll be using these little size pieces of paper, perfect for handmade cards. So let me just talk you through my process, and then I'll explain a few examples and ways that I'm going to use these as well. So hopefully that will help you to get through your paper scraps as well. So as you can see, I'm going through the biggest size first, just trying to figure out will it be a 6x8. You'll not actually see many of them because I'm starting with my smaller scraps first here, and this is where I'm measuring them to see will it be if the biggest size, for example, is 2-inch, which a lot of these are, then I'm just cutting them into the 2x3, or if there's any bits left over, it's just the 2x2. And then as I get to the bigger sizes, I do start off thinking, first of all, if it's 5.5-inch by 11-inch, then I know I can actually make that into a card front itself instead. And then working my way down, 6x8, as I mentioned, 6x4, and then the 3x4 or the 4x3. So I end up with some quite nice little piles. I have to say, this does take me quite a long time to do. I end up having to change my blade halfway through, so be mindful of that as well, depending on how much you've got to work through. The thing that I kept was some of the long strips, like the manufacturer strips, or some that were similar sizes, because they are also really great just to glue onto a card front to make your own pattern paper at the back. And I made quite a few of those at the craft retreat that I was on recently, if you saw those pictures. So always keep those long strips as well, they're useful for that. So I hope you get a bit of a flavour of what I'm trying to do, and then my goal is to work through this throughout the month. Don't use anything else, just get these used. And so some examples that I'm going to do, I'm going to see, for example, maybe the plain pieces of paper, or even maybe some of the patterned ones. I might pre-stamp some of my lawn fawn critters, for example, and get lots of things already stamped out. Similarly with sentiments, I'll be able to use some of these, especially the strips, to already stamp some sentiments and get those cut out ready, so they're good to use in a project whenever I need them to. So I've cut up all the scraps that were in this particular binder. I have to say that was a mammoth effort. It's took me well over an hour, probably an hour and a half, to cut all of those pieces. So I've got some strips, not as many as I thought I would have, to be honest. I did manage to get a few card bases of varying sizes. That's going to be good to use. Similarly, I've got a few 6x8s as well. Majority of them though are these 2x3s. You can see I got heaps out of that, which is great, and also some of these 4x3s, so that is good, and then a good stack of 6x4s as well. not as many of the little 2x2s as I thought. I really did use as much as I could, starting with the bigger sizes, working down. Of course, the beauty of having it in these sizes is I can quite easily, if I want any more of these, I can cut these sizes down, and make them smaller. So that is the bulk of it done. I'm going to transfer it all over into my storage container, which I showed you earlier. Okay, so I'm done. This is going to remain here as it always has, to make sure I work through my white scraps. And then this is the new addition, so this is going to stay here. And my goal throughout September is to try and get this eradicated as much as possible. So we'll check in at the end of September and see how I go with that. So the only thing I'm going to create with is this stash here. This is just from scraps, not original pads. It's about using what we've got. So you do need to destash, you know, give them to local schools, daycare centres, that kind of thing. Community centres, I'm sure they will appreciate it. I will see you tomorrow, hopefully, when I go through my sticker books. Thanks for watching.